Welcome back, everybody. Well, the Supreme Court kind of got ahead of me on this. So, yesterday we released a video where we were talking about the transgender military ban, and about an hour later, they came out with a ruling. So, I promised I'd follow up with it. So, here we go. So, like, subscribe, and let's dive right into this one. So, for those who don't know, yesterday the Supreme Court came out with a early phase ruling. I say that because it's not a final ruling. They kicked the decision back to the lower courts, and that's the key. But what they said is that Trump is able to ban the transgender individuals from serving while the other courts adjudicate and try those cases. So, anything you hear about that, it's not decided. The courts will end up finding on merit in a few months. So, anything you're hearing other than that, just take it that for now, Trump can ban them. And in the unlikely event, in my opinion, that the court does find that the ban was unconstitutional, I suspect they'll get back pay, they'll get reenlistment, they'll get all of that. Just like we're seeing with what Biden did during 2021 with the certain shot and militaries. Again, YouTube won't let me say certain phrases, so I can't say exactly what that was, but the court in that case didn't do a full ruling again, but they came out and said that the commander-in-chief is the president and has this authority. That all said, looking over it today, found some fun little CNN clips, so I want to dive into this one. Not sure we'll watch the whole clip because it's about 12 minutes, but I want to go through just kind of their argument. It's with Abby Phillip and her panelists, and I mean, it kind of hurt my head, but it's kind of funny at the same time. So again, make sure you like, subscribe, and let's dive right into this one. I think it's going to be kind of fun, and seeing CNN's arguments on this is... I'll just leave it at that, and I'll add more as we go. Okay, awesome. So let's dive into this one here. So what this is it's Abby Phillip on her show with a panel and a special guest who is a retired transgender U.S. Navy lieutenant. So this person went from male to female. This is the person right here in the white outfit. So I'm just going to hit play and we're going to go through this.
Main argument, Elena, that the Trump administration is making here is that that allowing transgender troops to serve hurts lethality and it hurts readiness. What do you say to that?
Well, there's no evidence of that. I think that, if that was the case, we've seen transgender people serving honorably for the last several years. And
several years that Biden allowed for it because Trump originally said no.
And what has changed between now and then? They've just woken up to a new administration who has a different outlook on their ability to serve. So I think that, if you talk to people who are serving on active duty alongside transgender troops, they're not making these complaints. The leaders in the military are not.
I question that because how could they make these complaints when the commander-in-chief was so pro for this? Any of those complaints possibly got buried or troops weren't comfortable making them. Just speculation on my part, but I think it's probably a bigger issue than this person's leading on.
Making these complaints. These are political complaints about military service. So I think that all of the courts that have looked at this issue and looked at it, and said there's nothing in fact to back up what.
Excluding the Supreme Court back in 2019.
What the government is claiming here. In fact, the judges challenged them to produce evidence, and they couldn't produce any evidence. So I think it's a really dark day for our country, where basically we're allowed to discriminate against a class of people.
If Scott,
There's where I have a problem with this. It's not a class of people. They are a group of people that have a diagnosed mental disease and require medical treatment to be who they are.
But if they can't produce evidence that this actually does, in fact, have an impact on readiness, I mean, how is this not then just discrimination?
Well, it's the opinion of the commander-in-chief, who, according to our Constitution, is the head of the military. I mean, regardless of anyone's opinion or anybody's, whatever side you're on, whether you're for it or against it, at some juncture, the president is the commander-in-chief of the military, and he has and should have broad latitude to determine how the armed forces should be operated. And so I think that's what he's doing here. I think that's ultimately what the court said today, was that the president is the commander-in-chief, and we gotta respect that.
Well,
under our Constitution.
but I mean, to her point.
And again, right there, president is the commander-in-chief, and he is the top person in our military. I mean, he has the nuclear codes. So,
Point. If there's not a downside, and it's been going on for years now, and
again, if there's no downside, I don't buy that, because we're not in an active war, and again, you're not going to complain about this to your leadership, who probably is not going to listen.
Just presenting your argument to them.
Yeah.
What is the argument other than Trump, Hegseth just doesn't want trans people in the military?
Well, I mean, I think that the president, we'll ultimately see. I think that's why the court is allowing the president to move forward with this until it works itself through the court system. Maybe the Supreme Court will be the final arbiter here to say, yeah or nay, you can do this.
And right there, I actually like him. He might be the only honest person I've ever seen on CNN, and since recent times. But he just right there said, hey, it's these other courts that have to work through this. And I applaud that. I don't think most CNN viewers would ever pick up on that.
But ultimately, I think the court is showcasing deference to the executive, saying that, look, you're the president, you're over the military. You do, for the most part, get to sort of dictate the standards of our military. And I don't really see how you can push back against that. Again, we'll see what happens.
And again, while there was no formal ruling back in 2021, the notes from the court align with that for Biden and the Rona jab.
What happens in the court?
I can.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I can. What if the president wakes up tomorrow and says, I don't want any black people in the military?
Right to racist. Gotta love CNN. Yep, Trump's just gonna wake up and be like, no black people. Done. None in the military. Just get them out.
Do we give deference to him on that?
Julie,
Well, no.
ridiculous.
No, wait a second. It's
Julie,
not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous because you're discriminating against a group of people in a very similar
Julie.
way. No,
I knew you were going to say that.
That it's not a protected class. Again, for most racism to be valid, it has to be an immutable characteristic. Transgenderism, by its definition, is not non-immutable, because you can have a surgery to change it. You, despite Michael Jackson, cannot have a surgery to not be black.
Excuse me. Well, I'm glad you.
I'll leave this one
But
alone
hold on,
today.
I'm curious.
I also love him. Just like, nope, I'm black. Not gonna wade into this. Nope, just no.
Why is it ridiculous? I mean, you just said the president should be the one who just decides.
Right.
So if he decides, he wakes up tomorrow and says, I think it's bad for morale, it's bad for cohesiveness, for there to be black people in the military, Latino people in the military, just in her hypothetical scenario, what's the difference between that and what we're seeing here?
I mean, are you really going to go down this ridiculous?
I'm just.
I love that the two conservatives are just like, we knew this was going to come, but we didn't even think that you'd be this stupid to bring it up. So I guess let's do it.
I'm sorry. Is she,
This is
asking
ridiculous.
based-
This is a ridiculous argument.
Well,
Okay.
The president,
considering what they've already
the
said
president,
about
the
DEI,
secretary of
let me just
defense,
let him-
the president,
And also right there, I love the just talking over him while he's trying to answer. I mean, I do this alone, but if that was my thing, I would just bullshit and just not really answer it, just to kind of make him mad, because I'm passive aggressive and petty like that.
Secretary of Defense have an argument here. They believe that readiness and unit cohesion and overall operations of the military are impacted.
I also just love the look of disgust.
By this. That is their opinion, and that is the opinion of the commander-in-chief, who the Constitution gives broad latitude to run the armed forces. So that's their opinion. You're allowed to have one. You're allowed to have one. You're also allowed to run for president and become commander-in-chief yourself. But until you do...
And again, this person could do that. I mean, I know nothing about this person except for this 3 minutes and 45 seconds we've watched. Probably better candidate than Harris.
Until you do,
I
he's the
still-
commander-in-chief.
I have to just say,
That's-
I didn't
you know.
hear an answer to the hypothetical,
Yeah.
right?
That's a-
I just
that's
didn't hear it.
hypothetical, though.
I
That's
didn't.
so
I mean,
ludicrous.
okay. The
The problem, though,
definition of discrimination, according to American Psychological Association,
American Psychological Association. I didn't know they were arbiters of the spoken word.
discrimination is the unfair or prejudicial treatment of people or groups based on characteristics such as race, gender, age, or sexual orientation. What is the difference between, prohibiting certain groups like transgender people from serving versus, people based on their race or even their gender, frankly?
I personally think there's a difference, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, I will
Do
say,
you believe that race and... Are you saying...
I love race and showcasing it. I missed that when I watched that one earlier.
saying that the quality
I'm
of race
just-
and the quality of
I'm just asking.
transgender are the same?
I'm just asking the question because I think you're making there's a
not.
distinction, but you're not explaining why.
No, I'm asking you. You guys brought up the hypothetical. Are you arguing that someone's race is the same as someone choosing to
Elena?
become
But
transgender?
your argument, you've
Again, immutable characteristic.
made the argument twice that the commander-in-chief's opinion is all that matters. You've said that twice now.
Well,
So
under
if
the
they wake up-
Constitution, yes.
So if he wakes up tomorrow and says it's not okay to be gay or lesbian and serve, because that's his opinion, there's nothing to back that up. They meet the physical standards, they meet the intellectual standards, they have voluntarily decided to serve their country, to give their life.
Except being gay and or lesbian isn't by definition a mental illness.
Their life for this country, so many of us don't have to. That it's the opinion without any basis in fact that's what matters more than the Constitution of equal rights and equal protection.
Go ahead.
no, I
you
was going to
mentioned.
say the other thing, or there's a few things that bother me about this, and mostly it was the language of the policy, right? When you're looking.
And I hinted at this earlier, but pay attention to this argument because it does not go how she thinks it's going to go.
Reading at some of these words, transgender people as inherently untruthful, undisciplined, dishonorable. That's
Untruthful. Very important. Very important. Cannot stress that enough.
That's like a very weighty thing to say about people who are courageously deciding to protect this country. The other problem, Scott, is that it's never enough. It's bathrooms today. It's sports today. It's sports tomorrow. It's the military today.
No, it's
and-
also sports today, by the way.
Yeah, it is sports today. And
80% of Americans agree, by the way.
Oh, that's fine. And 80%, guess what? The majority sometimes is wrong.
Yeah, the majority that don't want men in women's locker rooms and want safe spaces for women, I think that majority is right. We're not enslaving the women or anything like that, so I'm pretty sure that 80% majority is spot on.
That also happens, right? Because the majority used to believe that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was somebody who was a threat, that somebody who was not a good American. The majority of people used to be against civil rights. Were they right? No, they weren't. And so the whole point is when you target one group, and inevitably that line moves to everybody else. And I'm not saying he's coming for black people tomorrow, but considering that this is a...
Again, we had 4 years of Trump. Yeah.
This is a military, or this is a leadership that is already using DEI as code word for black people already when it comes to the military. Suddenly...
No, we're using DI for the actual word of unqualified and hired because of race, ethnicity, or gender identity.
When you don't protect the most vulnerable, you wind up making it worse for everybody else that's in the marginalized community. You don't think trans people are vulnerable in this country?
So is it your position that the commander-in-chief should recruit people who you're describing as vulnerable into the lethal
he
fight?
should.
So, first point that she destroyed on her own. No, we don't want vulnerable people in our military.
He should recruit people who want to serve and protect this country. And it's really...
And we had record low recruitment under Biden. And if I remember correctly, in the first month of Trump's presidency, we saw a surge in recruitment numbers. So people did not want to serve under this type of rule.
Really kind of ironic considering he dodged the draft that he suddenly has an opinion about.
He has an opinion because he won the
The good
election.
news is, and Elena, you pointed this out, this is going through the court system. The other side has the opportunity to present evidence.
Except for tomorrow, there's going to be thousands of people who wake up and get processed out. The harm will be done.
And
Okay, so this was yesterday. So today is the tomorrow that this individual is talking about. And I don't think there's been mass layoffs of military service members. There's a potential that certain ones who had high security clearance may have had their clearances lowered, may not have certain accesses all of a sudden because risk of disgruntlement. I could see that. But they're not going to just wake up and be homeless in some cases. There will be a transition plan for them. They just, will be pulled off of deployment instantly. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And they'll be phased out. And at no point has Trump said this will be a dishonorable discharge. This will be still good record for them.
I certainly understand that. But again, there's still an opportunity for it to continue through the proper process.
Right, but they wake up tomorrow without a job, being removed from their commands. Operational readiness will be impacted. And so there's commands that are going to be left without leaders. There's going to be real life implications for theaters around the world where our military is protecting this country. And for what end?
And where was this concern in 2021 where Biden kicked out a whole bunch of military personnel because they didn't want to get an experimental shot?
So, Elaine, I guess my point is, if a strong enough evidence is presented throughout the court process all the way up to SCOTUS, and it's ultimately believed, okay, hey, the other side has enough evidence where we can't rule in favor of the executive, then the executive, I believe, would respect that decision. But we have to allow this thing to move forward and see what was
your experience in the military like? Did you serve?
And remember what I said to remember. Untruthful or dishonest, I think was the exact term, but interchangeable.
After you had transitioned, or?
No, I served before my transition.
So you weren't in during your at all?
No.
Okay.
I came to know that I was transgender while I was serving with a top secret and above clearance, and I knew that I couldn't pass my polygraph test, and so I had to make a tough decision.
What? I mean, polygraphs have been proven to not be the be-all, end-all in truthfulness. But let's see. I decided I was transgender and figured out that I wouldn't be able to pass a polygraph test, but there's no evidence that it would be dishonest, and the term that Trump used of dishonest is offensive and horrible language, despite the fact that the transgender individual just said that they couldn't pass the polygraph test because they'd be dishonest. Okay.
Do I stay true to my character, my values, my integrity, or do I choose to leave this role and live a private life? And so I think that the challenge is
private life now on CNN and the founder and president of Gender Research Advocacy Council. Okay, well, that's pretty private.
is that the injunction was to allow people to continue to serve while the courts played out, right? So there would be no harm done to these folks.
And I'd argue that that injunction's even worse because hypothetically, if I was a military individual who knew that I could be kicked out of the military for no fault of my own for this type of a thing, my gut tells me that's a security risk.
Giving the courts an opportunity to work through these issues so people wouldn't lose their jobs. Now they're going to wake up tomorrow without jobs. They can't just come back in for serving 22 years, waiting for this court case to work its way through for 6, 9 months, 2 years.
So you hadn't, so was there a prohibition on you transitioning while you were in the military?
Back in that time, there was a ban against serving if you were, the don't ask, don't tell policy.
This was in the mid-90s.
This was in the mid-90s. Yeah.
So even before Trump's first term.
But can I ask you a question? Because I think this is relevant. You know, Elena was serving, left because of this policy. How many people is it okay to lose who are competent, who are doing their jobs because?
So got out in the 90s or late 90s, early 2000s. Trump gets elected in 2016. I think the math ain't mathin'.
For reasons like that. I mean, at the time, she could have been a gay or lesbian, and it probably would have been the same result as well. I mean, I think that's why ultimately they ended Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
I mean, I think
discrimination.
I think ultimately the Commander-in-Chief and the Secretary of Defense have to decide comprehensively about troop levels, troop readiness, and unit cohesion, and overall recruitment. They're actually quite happy with recruitment right now.
But there have never been a military standard that transgender people have not met. So the military standard.
I mean, to be fair, a woman going to a man probably is getting enough testosterone that could be meeting those standards. And before Hegseth, we had different standards for men and women. And a man transitioning to a woman under Biden would have been treated as a woman for those standards, so would have been probably hitting the lower end of the male standards. So technically the person's not wrong.
Standards have not been lowered for people who are transgender. And I think that's
not intentionally lowered.
The issue here. And the courts that have looked at this issue in depth have said this is pure animus, that there is no evidence.
Again, the court that I talked about yesterday is an LGBTQ judge, so I'm not totally sure that one's unbiased.
Evidence of this. So if you actually take the rhetoric out of it and look at the issue at its heart, all the courts say the same thing. So I think that's the travesty here.
I believe the president has the constitutional right to do this, and I also think you have the constitutional right to make your case on it, and everybody's going to be in court about it, and I think you should continue to make your case.
But you also talked about unit cohesion, and that's exactly the same kind of argument that they made against integrating the military when Harry Truman did it. I'm sorry, it's this.
The whitest one on the panel cannot let it go. I mean, this phase is just like, CNN pays me money. I don't think they pay me enough money for this.
Same argument. Okay. It's the same.
I mean, is she wrong about that, though?
Okay.
I mean, she is right about that.
Did not want to serve white.
I also love that he's trying to answer the black host's question, and the white person who is saying that black people should be represented better, basically, is talking over him, not letting him answer, because she is probably discriminating, not because of his race, make that abundantly clear, making it because of the R in the parentheses after his name.
I'm aware.
White people didn't want to serve with black people because of unit cohesion. So now you're saying gay people
Can I
shouldn't serve with
just?
straight people.
We only have a
because
couple
of unit
seconds.
cohesion.
Chair Michael,
I did not
I see
say
that
that.
you're
I did not say
frustrated that she made that argument.
I like that even the host had to interject. Like, I don't want this to all be about race, but white woman versus the two black people, and she won't let them speak.
But is she wrong that unit cohesion was used as an excuse to keep the military segregated for a long time?
I think we should
and
focus
also
on-
don't ask, don't
we
tell
should-
when it comes
we
to
should focus on the issue.
discriminating against gay and lesbian people.
We should focus on
Again, immutable characteristics.
the issue at hand. That's what I think.
Same argument.
But
No answer.
No, we should focus on the issue at hand. I don't know why we keep going to bringing up race. Let's just focus on the issue
Well,
at
hey,
hand.
look, it's
It's-
Nobody knows why they keep bringing up a race. Actually, I think everybody who's probably watching my channel knows why they're bringing up race. And it's this right here. Who broadcasted this original one? Because you can't get Trump on anything else, so Trump is racist.
It's race, sexual orientation. We've seen this twice, right? In two major junctures for the military. I'm just wondering if she is drawing parallels here.
And again, I can't stress this enough. To be gay, which I am, I do not have a surgery. I do not have to take multiple medications every day to still be gay. To be black, I'm pretty sure that same statement applies. So it is a completely different thing, and it is around the person's overall ability to be deployable.
Here between the arguments that are being made to maintain this policy.
I
Do you
reject
think that
those
she's
parallels. That's
Why?
my answer. I reject the parallels.
Sorry,
I
can
think
ask you
they're
a question?
ludicrous
Do
parallels.
you feel like you had a choice in your life as to what you were going to do? Or
I love that, I'm just going to totally ignore the black guy sitting next to me. And do you feel you're the same thing as a black person? Like, can I trap you into saying that? Don't worry, you're on CNN, so you can say it and there will be no ramification. But do you feel like you had no choice in this?
No, of course not.
No.
The same way that I didn't have a choice to be born who I was, the same way you didn't have a choice to be born who you were. So why do we get exclusions and she doesn't?
I didn't say that.
Because of surgeries and medications. This is not how they were born.
That Elena
Well, not
should be
Elena, but-
excluded.
Okay, why under this president's policy?
My
Why?
opinion here is let it work itself through the court system.
And I have no problem with that, but just don't
that's-
fire people while it's working through the courts. That's what these injunctions were doing, was letting it work through the courts. And the Supreme Court, I think, really just delegitimized itself even further today. And I think that's a challenge for all of this country when we don't have the checks.
And there's the other one. You got racism and you have the illegitimate Supreme Court. And I personally think what the Supreme Court did legitimizes them, because had they not done it this way, they'd have immediately had CNN, MSNBC, all of them saying, oh, well, the court skipped all this process and they just ruled and King Donald Trump owns the court. Like, it would have been the whole argument because the process wasn't followed.
Checks and balances of the courts, checking the executive power, and Congress checking the executive power.
And this is something that does not have to be checked. This is constitutionally spelled out, that Trump has the executive power over the military.
Power and all of those things, because at the end of the day, right now in the military, you can be a white supremacist, a known white supremacist, and serve in this military, but you cannot be transgender and serve.
Haven't researched that one. Not sure I need to, because what what was defined as white supremacist up until January 20th.
Serve in this military. That's a fact.
Okay, everyone. I didn't plan on going through that whole video, but wow, it just got funnier and funnier, so I had to do it. So if you've gotten to the end, I'm just going to leave it at what I covered on there. Again, we will have more of these videos. I will create a playlist down below so that you can kind of keep pulse and tabs on it. But again, I just love the meltdowns and the comparisons that aren't comparisons. And we're just going to see how this one goes. I'll keep a close eye on it. But thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and catch you soon.